Hello, I'm Tony Guida. Welcome. This is My New York, and I want to introduce you to a glamorous, sexy, wildly obsessed redhead. Her name is Ann Tenna. She's famous for being well known. That's both her job and her curse. And Tenna springs from the fertile mind of glamorous Marisa Acocella Marchetto. And you'll meet our guest next. I'm delighted to welcome to the program cartoonist and author Marisa Acocella Marchetto. So nice to have you here.
I'm so happy to be here, Tony.
Ann Tenna is a delightful, funny, and kind of serious, it has something serious to say, book.
I've had this idea for Ann Tenna for about 20 years. She always had the antenna hair. That went right to the universe. At one point, she was a teenager, she was a tween, and I never knew really where to take the story. She was always going to be a gossip columnist. And then...
Really, why?
I don't know. I just thought gossip was a really good metaphor for life because you are what you transmit.
Yeah.
And after doing Cancer Vixen, I had this kind of existential crisis. Mm-hmm. Because when you get cancer, when you have a life-threatening diagnosis, it makes you think about your life and where you were going up to that point. And I thought about how I wanted to live my life after that when my expiration date got extended.
You make no bones about it. In the book, you talk about yourself as being a superficial, person.
So it made me think about, I went back to Ann Tenna after finishing Cancer Vixen, and I thought, well, wow, that is a great arc. Somebody who has a life-threatening situation. Ann Tenna gets into a car accident through her own bad behavior, gets sucked up to another realm, meets her higher self, Super Ann, who challenges her to change her life for the better. Well, when I had that life-threatening diagnosis of cancer, I thought about who I could be. Who was Super Marisa? What could I actually do with the rest of my time on Earth? So out of that thought came Ann Tenna.
Your setting here is the world of gossip and the world of media. The phrase you use in the book is, we are all over-mediacated, a lovely pun.
We are all over-mediacated.
Well, Gawker and Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and you name it.
I know, you're sitting there and you're looking at your cell phone when there's people next to you, and you're liking all these pictures when there's somebody who loves you right next to you and you're ignoring them.
I saw two people in a restaurant not long ago.
Right.
Young, 30s. Mm-hmm. Didn't say a word to each other. The only words they spoke were to the waiter to order. Mm-hmm. And the rest of the time, both of them on their cell phones. The whole meal.
Why even go out to dinner with somebody?
I don't get it.
It's getting worse.
Sure, it's getting worse. And Ann Tenna is the founder. She has a website, a gossip web called iMauler, which I think is just a marvelous name that you came up with. It just evokes, for me anyway, it evokes the damage all of this stuff coming at us does to us.
Yeah, it really does. It's kind of like, I feel like it takes away our soul a little bit because we're just, constantly checking our phones where, all life is going by. You're not looking around you. You're not looking up above. You're not looking at the stars. You're looking at your stupid phone.
So Ann, as you said, has this accident and meets her higher self and is challenged. She doesn't respond well to the challenge at first.
No, she doesn't at all. She's annoyed that she's being sucked up into another dimension when when she could actually, her accident is actually going to be news, and she'll be on the front page of all the newspapers because, this traumatic thing happened to her, and she wanted to maximize the media.
Yeah. And she loves being the center of attention. There's one great image you have of Anne just flaunting herself with her butt sticking out and everybody kissing it and inviting her to this event or that event. Kiss, kiss, you look fabulous, darling. Did you lose weight? Kiss, kiss, you must come to my salon. I've created a one-of-a-kind pair of purple lizard pants for you, gratis. So, I mean, we get the picture. This woman is pretty shallow. And
Yeah, and
she's the star.
She's a star. She's powerful, but you know what she really cares about is what's in the swag bag, and can she have 10?
Right. And she apparently gets 10 most of the time. Well, finally, and I don't want to give away anything here, no spoilers, but the last time we see Anne, she's in what seems like a celestial chair and getting ready to beam live some sort of message. But that's where you leave it, which suggests that we may be hearing more and seeing more from Antenna in a sequel, perhaps.
That would be my dream, actually.
Are you more than a dream? Is this something you're working on?
Yeah, this is something I'm actually working on.
Well, good. Among lots of other things.
Yep.
This was I mean, to put something like this together, it's not only you write the story, but you're illustrating the story with such beautiful and fabulous and outrageous, in some cases, illustration. How much work is that? How long did this take?
Oh my gosh. Just the drawing alone after the story was greenlit, and the roughs, it took 10 months working 18 hours a day. I didn't really leave my house.
10 months working 18 hours a day?
Yeah, it did. I didn't leave my house.
And you didn't get carpal tunnels from all that?
No, I was just so locked in and focused. I really wanted to finish.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and I drew from 7,000 photographs, a lot of selfies I took. You know, I drew from my face. Like when Anne discovers that her boyfriend was cheating on her, she makes his face like,
Right.
I drew that.
Yeah.
You know, I drew Anne looking up. I just basically drew my face and turned it into Anne with the mole and the red head, you know, red hair. And so, yeah, but I drew what does an Escalade look like? I couldn't draw that out of my head. I had to draw, you know, from actual photos.
Sure. You didn't start out with an intention of being a cartoonist, and as I understand it, you come from a family where your mother was a shoe designer.
She designed shoes for Jackie Kennedy when she was
Really?
First Lady, yeah.
No wonder you have this obsession with shoes.
The first thing I ever drew was a shoe. My mom.
The first image you drew?
The first thing I ever drew was a shoe. She would, after she had me, she would freelance and she would do these drawings of shoes, and she had these plastic lasts, and I would draw shoes on the plastic last. And then she did these trend reports where she would draw these fabulous women wearing her fabulous shoes. She designed shoes for Delman. And I would just imitate her. I would draw those fabulous women wearing fabulous shoes, and I started doing that at 3 years old.
And how did that transmute into becoming
A cartoonist?
a cartoonist and a vocation?
Well, what happened was I did those drawings up until about 8. And then I'm from New Jersey, born in Elizabeth, grew up in Scotch Plains, and we would always go to Ocean City, New Jersey for vacation.
Ah, yes.
So the first vacation that wasn't the Jersey Shore was Bermuda, and my mother has this big, big, big personality. So we went to this resort, and my mother didn't like the room at the resort called the Lantana. So she complained to the owner and said, I would like something bigger. So the owner said, well, there's this pink elephant of a house on the fringe of the resort. He said you could stay there. So we moved into this house, and on the walls there were these drawings with captions on them. And I thought to myself, wow, the women that I have been drawing ever since I was 3, I was about 8 now, I thought, wow, they could speak because I could give them captions. And my mother said, Marisa, this is James Thurber's house. He's a New Yorker cartoonist.
Oh, my God. Talk about an inspiration.
Talk about an inspiration. So
These are James Thurber cartoons on
James
the wall?
Thurber cartoons in James Thurber's house, and all over the house were New Yorkers and books written by James Thurber. So I stayed up that night and I read Old New Yorkers, and I read The White Deer, I read Thurber Carnival, and I fell asleep at around 4 o'clock. Well, I woke up 2 hours later with a sensation that things were crawling all over me. And I jumped up, looked in the bed, and it was infested with 400 red ants.
Oh my God.
So that's when I say I was bitten by the cartoonist bug.
Painful beginning.
It was a
in some-
painful beginning, and then I forgot about being a cartoonist and went into advertising.
Yeah, you went to advertising and what? Drew campaigns and.
I drew campaigns, always using those same women. And they were more interesting than the product. And they would say, Marisa, where's the product in your commercial, in your print ad? And reluctantly, I'd put the product in, but I was frustrating the client. I was frustrated. It was never a good marriage.
And it got pretty dark. I mean, you talk about, or I've read where you've talked about a sort of a moment, a crossroads moment, and you drew a cartoon, which I kind of call a dark cartoon, of the woman putting a gun in her mouth. I mean, the advertising person, and kind of, I didn't execute the big idea. I had it. It was so close, I just didn't see it. Now, you were never that desperate, were you?
Well, honestly, I actually drew that image when I was in a client meeting because I was like, oh, God, I can't take this anymore. And then what happened was every December 31st, New Year's Eve, I always make a list in my sketchbook of what I want to do for the year. Mm-hmm. Well, and I lit a candle, a votive candle, and I called in all the higher spirits. Well, instead of writing the list out, I drew that image, again, with a gun in my mouth, with a line. She was a little upset during the meeting. And that was my epiphany. I leaned into my sketch pad, forgetting that the candle was there, and lit my hair on fire.
Oh, my God.
So then I realized, oh my gosh, that's what I should be all along, a cartoonist. And went back to those women that I started drawing when I was 3 with the great shoes, and started just drawing this cartoon called She. And that's what happened. And then The New Yorker, and
here you are.
Yeah, and here I am.
We picked out a couple of your New Yorker cartoons, and they reflect your interest in fashion and style. Mm-hmm. And I love the one with the lady bending over a baby carriage and saying,
Gucci, Gucci, Gucci.
Yeah. This is such a terrific evocation of that world. Is this how fashionistas are trained and born? This is where they come from?
I think so. It's like you see them all over the place, downtown, the Upper East Side, and it's just like if you're not well turned out, you just don't leave your house.
And one more in that vein is the what was it, the Fendi bag lady?
The Fendi bag lady. Yeah, that was basically me. I mean, because as a cartoonist, you don't really make that much money, and I was always afraid of being homeless. So I kind of made it into a joke. Fendi bag lady, need matching shoes, please help.
Yeah. You talked earlier about how Antenna is a reflection of the epiphany you went through, the change of attitude and life, and which you wrote about in Cancer Vixen. I called it a graphic memoir, and you called it a graphic novel, and I don't want to confuse people, but just wonderful book altogether. I was so moved by this, and this, of course, is, what, 8 or 9 years old now?
Came out in 2006.
Yeah. And I'm embarrassed to say I only just read it, but it is an extraordinary account of death showing up on your doorstep, and a love story. I mean, how did you have the strength to do that, put that all down?
Well, it's interesting because I was writing this book. It was kind of like an anthropological study of women and how they act when there's a successful man in the mix, and how they make a play for him. So I was kind of recording all the goings on at my husband's restaurant. His name is Silvano, and he owns Da Silvano. And I noticed that when I was there with him, they would hit on him, and it was like I was just invisible. And it was kind of infuriating.
There are several scenes in the book of this happening, and him. No matter what he says, I'm here with my wife, they don't listen.
They didn't care. They didn't care. They were just basically throwing themselves at him, groping him. It was like ridiculous. So when I got the cancer diagnosis, that A story of my husband, at that time he was my boyfriend, fiance. That was the A story. That became the B story, and cancer became the A story.
It's such a accessible story. It's not like, oh my God, I don't want to read about somebody's cancer. You want to read about this person and how she deals with it. How do you accomplish that? I mean,
I don't know. I've always tried to find humor in every situation, because if you're not laughing, you're crying. And you know what? It's much more fun to laugh.
You're a meticulous reporter. I mean, you catalog and detail everything. Not only from a second diagnosis from a renowned cancer specialist in New York who turns out to be a quack.
Oh yeah, that guy.
Good thing you didn't name him or her. I was really taken by the detail in the reporting of what happens in each session. Just the amount of time you have to wait.
I just try to find the humor in the situation. For instance, the medical assistant who would always weigh me, her card said med ass, and I just thought that was kind of hilarious.
It's something you captured in the book. Now you do this, what, you have camera and tape recorder with you all the time?
At the time when I was doing Cancer Vixen, you really didn't have, did you have cameras in the iPhones or phones? I don't even think there was an iPhone back then. I had a BlackBerry. So, I had a camera, I had a tape recorder, and I was just documenting everything. I had to draw from photos because I wanted it to be, even though it was a drawing, I wanted the drawing to be as real as possible, because you could relate to, the more real it is, the more real the story is to you.
Yeah. I going back to the scene in the restaurant and all these women constantly hitting on Silvano, despite the fact that you're there, and he says, "This is my wife, leave me alone." And there's a great scene. I mean, I laughed a lot, where one of them hands him her card,
which was ironically pink.
Really?
Yeah, ironically, a pink card. Yeah, she handed him.
And what does he do with it?
Her card. He took that woman's card and gave it to a dog, who ate it. And everybody at the table, I was with my friends, we all laughed, and
I love it.
Yeah, and she didn't, and she just skunked away. But
it's, as I said earlier, it's among everything else, all the other things, it's a love story. I mean, the diagnosis comes. 2 weeks before you're supposed to be married?
3 weeks before I was about to be married, and I was getting married at 43. Kind of late in life, And I was like, oh my God, do you know how hard it is to find a really nice guy in the city and get married late in life at 43?
And he's going to leave me.
And I thought he was going to leave me.
Yeah, that's your...
And on top of it, the epic screw of my life, I didn't have health insurance. So I had to tell him, not only did I not have cancer, but I didn't have health insurance. My insurance lapsed. And
you depict that wonderfully visually in the book, the drawing of you telling him, and every sentence, you're getting shorter and shorter. You're trying to disappear. You don't want him to hear.
I felt like I was disappearing. I felt smaller and smaller and worse about myself.
And his reaction?
Was, don't worry about it, we'll take care of it, che bella giornata, which was always his thing. It's like, it's a beautiful day.
Yeah. He's an extraordinary man, as you portray him. And I have to admit, and I do this with a little bit of embarrassment about my own cynicism. I'm reading about this, and I'm saying, nobody can be this good. There isn't, the guy can't be this perfect. And then I'm hating myself for having that reaction to your...
Why? You're not perfect? I look at you and I say, Tony Gotti, you're pretty perfect.
Well, come on, that's you know, you can't get away with that answer. I mean, it's a natural reaction, isn't it?
No, I know, and I think I can understand that, but he was really great. I mean, he brought me cappuccinos when I was like too tired or couldn't even get out of bed after like the chemo effect was cumulative, and so I was just at the end I was just so exhausted. He was bringing the cappuccinos to me, and I drank them in bed.
I mentioned, these books, though they are, well, one is a novel, but there's reporting in there, and you're a pretty good reporter.
Thanks.
And there's a word for the kind of reporting that's done with picture reportage, and you did that for, I think, a magazine on 9/11.
Yeah, I did for Talk magazine.
And you live in that part of the city, so this must have been a tremendously moving and difficult experience to be a reporter and catalog this stuff.
Well, and I find this with cancer, I find this with whenever you're going through a traumatic thing, instead of like thinking about having cancer, I would do what I called the law of distraction. Focus on something in the future, or focus on something beautiful instead of something that's painful. For instance, instead of looking at the chemo IV needle in my hand, I would wear a fabulous pair of shoes and change my focus from my hand to my foot. And that's the law of distraction.
Well, there's a wonderful drawing you have in the book of as you prepare, I guess, for chemo one day. You're mentioning and cataloging the shade and the kind of lipstick.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, everything had a meaning. I would wear a Brave lipstick.
Yeah.
Or Viva Glam. I wore that, and I applied that lipstick when I was sitting in the chemo chair.
Hey, positive reinforcement.
Yeah, Viva Glam, long live.
Yeah, why not? You're Viva Glam, and
yep.
I'm not going to succumb to this. I'm going to kick, as you say in the book, you're going to kick cancer's butt, and fortunately you have. I mean,
thank God.
Nice to be able to say that.
Yeah.
Wondering what you're working on now. What do you?
I'm thinking, I'm sort of working on a sequel for Antenna. I have a few ideas.
Do you do cartoons? I mean, do you work every day on cartoons for the New Yorker? I mean,
no. I mean, I write ideas down, and then I do my batch, and I turn in my batch every Tuesday.
Yeah. You make the schlep to the office?
Yeah, or sometimes I just email them.
All right.
Like today, I'm going to email because I'm here with you.
And you're having from what I can tell, I'm a subscriber, you have a pretty good acceptance rate.
It's hard to sell a cartoon there. It's really difficult.
All the competition, or
competition.
Their idea of what's funny has changed?
Yeah, it's like you never know. Something that you think is really funny, they won't even take to bring to the next meeting. First meet with the cartoon editor, Bob Mankoff. You'll give him like 10 cartoons. He'll keep 2 or 3, and then he'll take that to the cartoon meeting, and that's with David Remnick and a few other people. And you never know.
Those 2 or 3 may not survive that.
Yeah, exactly. So
the final cut.
The final cut. It's hard.
We're talking so much about media, and your great phrase, over-mediacated, and it just happens today. A clinical psychologist at MIT, whose name you may know, Sherry Turkle, who is apparently renowned and respected in the field of analyzing and talking about and commenting on media, and apparently she was a great supporter of it in the past, and lately not so much, has written a book a while ago and is out with a new book, Sherry Turkle, saying about the dangers of too much media in our lives. We consume other people in bits and pieces as though we use them as spare parts to support our fragile selves.
That's so true. It's so true. I mean, you post images of yourself on Instagram, and it's like that's my fake life. That's the image I want you to see. It's not the real me. It's not the real you. I mean, I know people who, whenever they feel really bad about themselves, post a really good picture because they want people to think that they're doing okay.
Well, you seem to be doing okay, and I'm delighted to be able to
Thank you.
meet you and talk about your work, and wish you great success going forward, and glad you're healthy. Marisa Acocella Marchetto, beautifully melodious Italian name. I'm happy to be able to pronounce it.
You are one of the few people who actually did pronounce it correctly. Tony Gaida, it's a pleasure being here. I'm so flattered and honored to be here.
Well, thank you. It's a delight. And I hope you enjoyed the program, and we will see you next week.